It is 10 a.m. on Wednesday, October 14th, 2020. I am Deborah Allen, Chairman of the Administration Committee, and I'm calling our meeting to order as of now in this date. Can we call the roll? I think we have a number of people in the room, and I think we even have someone online, so.
Kopi, Davist,
Mark, are you there?
I show him as muted.
He's
Can,
muted?
Trying to ask him to unmute.
Okay. Mark, we need you to unmute and come back to us. Why don't you go ahead?
Braz, Caius,
Caius present.
Leonard,
Here.
Martin,
Thank you very
There,
much.
that button was unreactive. I was poking it, but sorry.
Okay, welcome, Mark. Thank you. Okay, can we have a motion and second to approve the minutes? Mr. Caius, I see your hand. Mr. Leonard, sorry, you're just too slow, Mark. Mr. Leonard seconds. Are there any comments on the minutes? Mr. Caius, go right ahead.
Just curious, I just want to make sure everybody received them. I just got mine like 20 minutes ago, but I had a chance to look them over. I feel comfortable with them, but
Okay.
if someone hasn't gotten them,
Do you feel comfortable going forward, or do you want to defer?
I do. I just thought I'd bring it up.
Okay, good. Yeah, there was a bit of a scramble. I don't know where mine went either, but
Yeah.
we found them and so on. Good, thank you. Okay, if there's no further discussion, can we do a roll call on the minutes?
Davist,
Davis, yes.
Braz,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Allen.
Oh, yes. Aye, thank you. Good. Finance reports are included in the package for review. We literally have no one here in the audience to make public comment. Is there anyone online who would like to comment or otherwise add to the good of the cause? All right, let's move on to facilities management. Our executive director is Mr. Ricky Sparks, and can I turn this over to you?
Thank you. In terms of capital projects, what we have right now for Building C, there's an elevator renovation that's in process, should be wrapping up shortly here within the next week. Earlier this year, Building B elevator renovation was completed. We currently right now have Building C, a HVAC improvement that's that's in process. This one may have to be rolled over into next year due to the inability to get the rooftop units due to COVID issues that we're having. Some of the manufacturers were closed down for a period of time, so they're a little backlogged. So this one may probably have to come back next month and see if I can get this rolled over into next year so it can get completed. The health department roof renovation is near completion. It's in its final stages. We have here. The next big item, it's not necessarily a capital project. It is the multi-use facility. Currently right now, things are going real well with that. We're on schedule. They're making a lot of progress on this project. I do have a short video clip. We don't have to show the whole thing, but I don't know if Blair, we have that keyed up and ready to go.
Wow.
This is great. You have to do this all the time for us, Ricky. This is just really fun.
I'm making progress. This looks good.
It's good.
They're gonna pave the parking before the season ends, or is that?
The parking lot will probably get paved either later this week or early next week. They're making a lot of progress, so it should be done.
It's really fantastic. I mean, we're talking paved and landscaped. So the people working during the winter on the interior of the building will be able to pull into a essentially what looks like a finished building and parking lot. And that interior work, that when it's fully enclosed and you're out of the winter weather, you get a lot faster and higher quality work. So it's going to be going better.
That on the corner side?
Drew, I have a question for you. We've got these great windows. Are those windows going to be like a bubbled glass so that you get the light but you don't see in? Or
I don't
is-
know. We talked about that. That's
Is-
called a diffuser glass.
Yes.
You guys know?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, I think it's a diffuser glass, so it's, you can see in, but you can't see in as well, but you can see out, so you should be fine. It lets light in.
And the white objects on this roof are what? Materials?
That's the insulation.
Insulation.
Yeah, that's the roof insulation and panels.
There you're looking at all the doors for the sheriff's repair shop and emergency equipment storage.
Can you believe the size of the sheriff portion?
The floors are all.
Now, some of that right there is,
Actually, this is probably a week or so old, right?
Yeah, that's a couple weeks old.
The floors are all poured. It's actually a lot farther along than what this shows even.
That's the corner side there
That's
with the
that's what we
sally port.
started with there, right? The corner, that section?
The other side, yep.
But the side on the left is actually facilities. The corner's all the way on the right-hand side, on the other side of the sheriff area.
Oh, on the other side.
and the storage space, that doesn't have like a separate wall yet, right?
Not yet.
Oh, yeah.
They'll be building those walls shortly. The mason's coming in, I think, this week.
Yes.
And there's also, I guess what we call a bombs disposal or explosive storage area that was kind of a late addition. And that's kind of up on the hill by the JJC. And it's a recessed bunker down into the ground lined with concrete blocks.
That up?
Sheriff's paying for that.
Up to the left up there?
Yeah, it'd be to the right.
On the
Oh,
back
wait,
of the
no,
building.
we're back on
Or
the corner.
behind us?
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
can't tell which way we're looking.
Yeah,
To the right, I think.
that's.
We're
the,
looking west there.
Yes, that's
Okay.
looking west.
Sure. So it's up behind us.
So I'm going to ask Chris to outline what's going to take place this week real quick.
Be over this way. Is that right, Ricky? Up the hill here.
Yes, up the hill right there.
Up that way.
Was that the east side over there?
Yeah, so we had our groundbreaking ceremony right here.
Right.
The bomb disposal area would be right up in this area.
There you go.
Yep.
So we're looking west, east.
And that vehicle is moving down the new access,
That's the new drive going over to the sheriff's facility.
like a public access and then a security access.
Right, with a
Yeah.
gate in between the two.
You can see it now, Drew, if you point up there where the bomb area is going to be, you can see it right there. Yeah,
Right there.
there you go.
So if it pleases the committee, I can brief you on what's going on this week and the next week. Currently, hopefully this week, and what it looks we're on track is the final pours of the sidewalks, curbs, and pads. Continuing the sprinkler system work this week and the next following 2 weeks. The EF stuff works and VAVs and gas lines, all that internal piping is going in and it's all pretty much in the ceiling. Backfill the islands, backfill the dirt, which is completed. Just a little cleanup and touch up like Mr. Froz mentioned, the landscaping. We'll be soon starting the salt dome excavation. The windows will start going in 2 weeks from now. Excuse me. The frame siding and flashing for the next 3 weeks. Stone paving starts next week. Rough end painting starting next week. Roof drains and things of that nature will be the next 2 weeks. Corners, facilities, roofs the next 2 weeks. And the landscaping starting next 2 weeks from now. So we're really moving along. As a mention, they started pouring the stone over the holiday weekend and compacting it in preparation for the asphalt lay. and that is ongoing this morning as well. They started furring out the building management side of the building. Corners area is almost 100% complete, furring that out, which is they're putting in, remember, Mrs. Allen, the metal walls, the old school, we'd had that discussion between the old school 2x4s and the metal framing. So then once that's all completed, then they'll start pulling the electric and other items through it before they start putting up the drywall. And corners area is near complete. They've started doing some walling in the sheriff's area for the mechanical room and the electrical room. And again, building management, they started walling up some of those office spaces in there.
Okay.
Pending any further questions, that'll complete my brief.
Okay, that's
Thank you for that.
all I
That's
have
a-
for
that's a-
capital project update.
A wonderful thing to see. And Drew, thank you for continuing to monitor and
No, it's
go to the
been-
meetings.
It's just been fantastic. The timing and the weather couldn't have been better, and all the subs are performing great, and the team has been performing great, so no complaints, not a single one. And the materials, we were all worried early on about the COVID with factories slowing down. We've had no material delays of any consequence, so.
Mr. Leonard.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just wanted to thank Drew and Ricky and everyone involved with this. I was doing a little research last week on buildings, which I'm not very knowledgeable about. And it's very interesting. This building, which is about 50,000 square feet, is being completed for a little over 13 million. The city of Aurora built a building comparable without a coroner's office in there and facilities. And it might have been a couple thousand square feet bigger, but their cost on that was a little over 40 million.
How much?
40 million.
Oh.
So I just want to thank everybody involved for what a great job they did, not only in creating a beautiful building, but doing it so fiscally responsibly.
Yeah.
So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have decades of use that's going to happen with this building. We've got room to expand. We've got room to move our people through safely. It's everybody needs to go and see it up close and personal because it's just really cool. And we keep getting this lovely feedback from unexpected places. Mr. Allen, your presence has been noted. I got some lovely feedback about dealing with you. Jeff Chidester, who is a relative of Steve Chidester, who we lost. Jeff is the on the ground guy every day, and his reputation precedes him. From a completely different quarter, I heard you've got one of the best supervisors on the ground there. So, and then of course the Wegman family going out of their way for us to get us started. It's just every now and then the planets align, and we just need to be grateful, I guess. Thank you for that report.
Ma'am,
Do you want
to
to
add to that, if you don't mind, next Tuesday, the 20th, we have a scheduled site visit with the coroner's office and their staff at 3:30, if anybody else would like to join.
20th at 3:30?
Yes, sir. We're going to meet up at the construction trailer. And then from there, we'll proceed down.
I'm sorry, I just missed that.
I apologize, ma'am, I caught you off guard. Next Tuesday, the 20th at 3:30 p.m. We're going to take the coroner's staff there for a site tour of their section. But if anybody else would like to come along for that part of it or a greater part, we'd be willing to help.
Okay, good. Are we ready to move on to discussion of the resolution extending the Corrigan Clark contract? Ricky, do you want to give us some lead into that, or?
Yes, per this committee's recommendation from the last administration meeting, we did move forward to extend Corrigan Clark's contract through June 2020. However, at the same time, we do have a bid out on the streets now to bring in additional architect and engineering firms per this committee's request. And I think at that request, we were instructed to bring in 2. So those are in process of coming in. We'll go through the evaluation process and select two of those vendors to take action or proceed Corrigan Clark starting after June.
Okay, may I have a motion? Mr. Caius and Mr. Frost, I'll take your second. I just wanted to steer you, if you have a chance to go back, on page 54 was a list of projects that Corrigan Clark has been involved with. And then on page 62 is an updated list. And I think that gave me some extra perspective on why staff has been pleased working with Corrigan Clark, because it's a lot of material to cover. It's roofs and it's parking lots and it's unexpected things like the vault. And it's just, oh, thank you, Claire, for pulling, oh, Mark, thank you for pulling that up. Appreciate it. It's just, now we know why Ricky has been breathing heavily since he joined our team here, and you get some perspective on all the stuff that gets touched by the architect in residence. Conversation on this, is it acceptable to the committee to extend this through June? And then we'll start looking, we'll go through a best practices plan is to look at all of our contracts with some regularity and see what's out there and see what kind of pricing we can get and so on. And we'll start to do that in January.
Well, it's actually on the street now. So we put together along with purchasing, put it out on the street. So we're waiting for those vendors to come back. The last count, there was at least 50 vendors that at least downloaded or took the RFP and looking at it.
Good. Okay, questions, discussion, Mr. Leonard?
Yes, just one question. I noticed that the contract is for up to $200,000, and it truly is only a 7-month contract. And I think annually it was 200,000 before. Is that something we need to prorate, or is there any guarantee that they will stay within those limits?
It's basically driven by us, and this is just an extension of an existing contract. So one of the things that we did put in the resolution is that they're not to get any additional work unless it's an emergency. So that put the constraints on how much we were spending with those guys.
Would you be more comfortable breaking it into monthly segments and having the emergencies come back when they happen?
No, I don't think so. I think Mr. Sparks has got it under control, and the fact that no new projects can be started, it's going to keep us well within the range we need to be. So yeah, I have no problem with it. I just want clarification.
It's fine, good. Other comments? All right, would you be willing to call the roll for us, Karen?
Copey, Davis,
Davis, yes.
Frost,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Aye. Good, thank you, folks. All right. The next resolution is authorizing a contract for lawn and landscape maintenance services, and this was bid out, and trying to remember the company that
Ratliff.
Ratliff won this bid. Mr. Sparks, do you want to lead us through this at all?
Yes, this is a contract that we did take out to bid, and Ratliff was the lowest provider bidder at this time for this contract. So we're looking to move forward with Ratliff for the next fiscal year.
And $93,000 a year, and we're looking at a 2-year contract.
Yes.
Okay, all right. May I have a motion? Mr. Leonard, Mr. Frost, seconds. Discussion on the landscaping. Mr. Davis, do you want to weigh in on landscaping?
Well,
Well, you're
I
out.
don't have a shovel in hand, so I guess not at the moment.
You're out seeing it up close and personal as you're strolling around the grounds. Okay, shall we call the roll?
Davest,
Davis, yes.
Bras,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Aye. Uh, And this was an interesting project coming forward. Mr. Sparks, do you want to talk to us about the 2020 Sparkle plan?
Yes, this is a facility usage request by the City of Geneva's Commerce Chamber. And what they want to do is to put lights on the 3rd Street courthouse trees and bushes to make it sparkle.
Have they done this before and I just don't remember?
I don't recall this.
Okay.
I
So-
recalled other things, but I don't recall this.
In the time of cholera, they want to throw up some lights.
Yes.
Do you have any concerns about damage to the foliage?
No, I don't. Actually, I believe last year, the Christmas tree died and actually they replaced it. So it's actually their tree on our property. So I don't have any problem with them damaging their own property.
So they're kind of experiencing an ownership interest and keeping it all beautiful and.
Yes.
Okay. Can I have we'll look for consensus on this. Mr. Frost will move it and somebody willing to second, Mr. Martin will second on behalf of Geneva. Thank you. Okay. So consensus to go forward with the lighting project. Karen?
Davest,
Davis, yes.
Bras,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin.
Alan, aye. Good. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to information technology. We have our executive director, Mr. Roger Fonstock here, who's going to lead us through a resolution reimbursing the general fund with chargebacks from various other accounts and from our offices and our departments and even outside agencies sometimes. May I have a motion on this? Mr. Leonard, you're comfortable with that? Mr. Caius will second. Okay. Roger, can I turn it
Sure.
over to you?
Blair, I don't know if you and Mark could switch to the slides that we had for today. I tried to simplify this down. We've been going through a lot of tables and charts and the different fee study from the original study that we had. What we've broken this down into is basically an amount from our budget that would be divided by the number of people in a department or an office. And the question is, which budget do you use? So we have 3 options in this to recover basically the costs of operating what we do for offices and departments, specifically those that are special revenue that are outside the general fund that collect money from state, federal, or other taxes, just trying to recover the costs associated with providing the support. So the first part of this would be to look at the budget divided by FTE to get a rate. And in each option, you'll see the first one is the fully loaded costs of the IT budget, which that includes personnel, contractual, commodities, and then the enterprise contractual services software budget. So it's 5.4 million divided by the 1,266.84. I don't know who the 0.84 person is, but we have a lot of half part-time people, so we're counting how those people are supported. So that comes out to a annual rate of $4,289 per FTE unit. The second one is just the IT budget. So it's the personnel and wages and benefits. It's the contractual and commodities budget for IT. That one is 4.1 million, 4.2 million divided by the number of employees, which is a $3,308 a year rate per FTE unit. And the last one is just understanding our personnel costs. This is the labor that goes into supporting 40 plus offices and departments, and we run IT in about 35 buildings and I think 7 cities now. So it's 3.5 million. 1,266 units, and divide that out, it's $2,793. That is actually close to or very near what we are currently charging. So in looking at this, if you look at the second page, page 2, if you could forward the slide for me, what you're looking at is the option and what they recover from the special revenue or outside funds. You'll see that option 1 is a significant recovery. That's everything that we do being charged back dollar for dollar across all line items. And option 2 is just personnel, contractual, and commodities for IT. You're at 658,000. And then option 3, which is just personnel. If we just charge for the personnel and recover our costs of labor, you're at $459,000. And that's a recovery of revenue to the general fund above and beyond what we collect now. So that would be the increase in costs across some 40 offices and departments for special revenue and funds outside of the general fund. So if you go to the third slide, what you'll see is that we're at a point right now where we think that option 3, which is the least costly option to recover our labor costs associated with personnel of $459,000, would help with our current revenue gap. In other words, between what we get from the general fund and what we get from special funds, the general fund is subsidizing the special revenue funds to the tune of about $459,000 on labor costs. It will lower costs to some offices and departments that get special money. If you look at the tables that we had in the other packet, there's a green, blue, and yellow table. We're talking about the yellow column. And in the actual packet, there's a copy of that table if you want to refer to it. There are some departments that would see increases, and I think we talked about that before. I think notably, I think the health department, which receives a lot of state and federal money, they would, I think they would see an increase. There's a couple of other departments that we haven't charged anything in the past that are special revenue, and they would see a modest increase. And the Forest Preserve, we've already talked about, would see an increase as well. It represents personnel and wages and benefits in the IT budget. It does not represent contractual commodities or any of the enterprise software. The last item is that anything that we get that's a difference within the year, it's new or it's something that they're directing us to do on their behalf that we hadn't programmed into our budget, we would invoice for specific direct costs to any of the special funds. So that's how we'd handle any of the things that come about throughout the year. We give them a statement of work, an estimate of costs, and if they approve of it and have a budget for it, we'll do it. So that's how we've handled that throughout time too. So the one thing that I was mentioning with Chairman Allen was that this has been basically the structure that we've used over the past probably 15 years. It's very similar to what we already do, but this would be something that the board would endorse, and the board would basically have it as a resolution. So at that point, we would use that and only that as a way of trying to recover some of the revenue that we feel is not being captured and that the general fund is subsidizing. The reason we chose the personnel costs and not to add all of the others is because there is some specific value to having centralized technology planning and services that saves all of us money. And what we were trying to look at is at the point where you're trying to charge 100% for everything that we do, you might encourage people to go and try to look at a distributed model where they'd go out and seek services and incur additional costs just because they're paying 100% whether they stay or go. And in that, you lose the central budgeting function and some of the value of buying large amounts of equipment and services together. So we don't want to discourage that. This certainly covers our personnel costs. It would add the $459,000 to the general fund as a revenue recovery part. The last piece of this is the implementation schedule. If you'd switch to slide 4. Slide 4, the fee implementation. What we'd like to do is notify everybody sometime first part of the year in January. We'd tell them what the new fee schedule is. For the ones that are paying, it will be no surprise. They're used to this. They've seen this before. In fact, they might be surprised that it's not exactly as much as it used to be. It's a little bit different. It's marginally smaller for some offices. The other ones that are more, we'll have to work with them to talk to them about how this is implemented. The good part is that by March, we could have a 3-year fee schedule out to everybody, that they would understand their costs for the next 3 years. And then we would basically look at implementing all of this for fiscal year 2022. So there's no rush to push this on people that just finished their budgets, that just managed to get all their revenue and expenses figured out. We want to try and do this in a way in which it's easy to incorporate into a next fiscal budget. So sometime before the December 2021, we would be planning this with them to get it into their 2022 budget. And the last piece, which is slide 5, is the action item. So there's a resolution, and if you notice the second paragraph, we're using, it's underlined, the personnel cost method and invoicing specific direct costs. I think that if they had worked with us in the past, this is pretty much exactly what we had done in the past. It's just that the board would be saying that that's the official way to do this chargeback. I think the only serious impact are to the offices that have never paid it before. We'll have to start working with them so that they understand this. But when we go to them and tell them, why are we doing this and why is it valid, we can say we did a fee study. We've looked at different ways of costing this. You're a special revenue. You're outside of the general fund. The general fund shouldn't subsidize the work that you're doing. And this is the fairest way that we could assess the cost back, and we'll recover money back to the general fund that probably should have been paid for, the last 20 years or so. So that's what we're recommending. The resolution, you have a motion and a second for it. Again, we're recommending the personnel cost method, and then anything additional would be a direct statement of work and an invoice. So if you have any questions, Charles is here. Charles helped work on this too. Yep.
Mr. Caius?
Sure. Should have passed it off to Charles for the tough questions.
No, well, he worked on it with me quite a bit, so I got backup. No, just
There
kidding.
you go.
Yeah.
Double team. Who would you expect to see, which departments or areas would be, that haven't been paying, that would now be charged and be required to pay?
In that spreadsheet that was in the packet, you'll see the
Oh.
far yellow column. You'll see people that have basically not paid any chargebacks, even though they're special revenue. They're getting money from the state, Fed, or other tax bases. Blair, I think it's in the email I sent you this morning. There's a version of it if you wanted to pull it up, but it was in the packet also. So
It starts on page 88, I think.
page 88, she's got the page number, so it's in the packet. Yeah, that one. That's it. So if you're on the right-hand column in yellow, I know it's hard to read. That's why we're trying to put it in a different slide. And we're willing to work with the offices and departments and try to review the chargebacks. And I think that's one of the reasons why we wanted to give them so much time. I mean, it obviously, the budget's already been determined for this year. The revenue and expenses have already been balanced by finance, and the county board's already displayed the budget. So it's kind of late in the game to try and do anything with it now. But I do think next year, when we get ready to prepare budget submissions, we would have all of this in front of every office and department and explain why it is the way it is, kind of the scenario that we presented today, and then ask them if they have any specific concerns. Mr. Martin.
Mr. Martin?
I have 2 questions. Just number one, confirm when we talk about the cost of personnel, that includes benefits and
Yes.
everything else. And then the second is that we've talked before about the forest reserve.
Yes.
And are these, when you say the 3-year budget, that means that all that just says, here's what you pay for 3 years. You're not graduating in, or are you graduating in?
This would not have that, and I think part of that was because we're giving them, more than a year to consider how this will affect them. We could consider that. We could do it as a phased-in approach, but I think our feeling was, if we set a time frame in the future where it gives them time more than a fiscal year to look at it and understand it, we could work with them if it were, something where they said they can't do it. But I think that would be something we would handle as a case-by-case scenario.
I think that the Forest Preserve has some unique fiscal issues over the next couple of years that at least in my mind, would make it something we should consider.
And I think from our direction, if we had somebody that had, pushed back and said they can't do this, I think that would be a meeting for the administration committee to say, this is going to be their, this is what we're going to do. I think some of this was taking our own staff out of the equation of trying to settle chargebacks and revenue with elected officials and departments, just establishing that the board said this is what we should be doing. Because when we do the chargebacks and the revenue with some of the special funds, we get some pushback saying, well, why is it that much? How did you establish that rate? And we were like, okay, well, we'll do a fee study to establish the rate. So we completed the fee study, and we do have, that information. If they ask us, how did you get this number? We can kind of substantiate that. But then the second part is if it's something that only the IT department is saying, this is what your invoice is, then, we don't have any means of enforcing it. We don't have any means of handling their budget for them. So it's the board is saying you need to do your due diligence and pay, for your respective costs associated with this. I honestly, I'm not sure exactly how it will work out for someone in the Forest Preserve's future tense, how they're going to handle things a year from now, 2 years from now. And I do think that conversation would come back to this committee. I think that would be important.
Mr. Leonard.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Martin's point about the Forest Reserve, a couple points I'd like to make is, number one, the services that your department is giving the Forest Reserve equates to about $272,000 a year. Under this proposal, the Forest Preserve would pay back $209,000. However, because of the fiscal constraints of the Forest Reserve and the fact that they're probably going to be in lost revenue this next year, about $900,000. I'm wondering, and if this would go through administration, if we could set something up where maybe the very first year, instead of 209, we do 109, and then take that 100,000 and add that on to 50,000 a year to the second and third year, just to make the transition a little bit softer, if that would be agreeable.
I think we could work with them, and I think that might be something that Forest Preserve, once we show them the actual 3-year chargebacks, come back with a counter, this is what we can do financially, and then we would bring it here and show you what they say they can do. I don't know that needs to be, determined today. And we've had that in the past when we used to work with the court clerk's office, and this was, 15 years ago. We would be told, hey, send the court clerk their phone bill. And the court clerk would reply back and say, we don't have the money to pay it. And we'd take it to finance, and they'd say, well, they obviously don't have the money to pay it. I'm like, well, that we were asked to send them a phone bill to, get the revenue from the courts back. So we've worked with the court clerk's office for countless years trying to figure out how do we get them to handle chargebacks and pay us back. I think that's the same thing also that this will fix is when the court case management system was implemented, there was a transfer of employees to the IT department. And in that transfer, there was a set dollar amount that was transferred over. Well, we've had 2% increases and other things happen. So that original amount, which was, I think was 300,000, Charles? That original amount that was transferred over, they've been transferring the $300,000, which in today's dollars is about 10, 12% short of what they originally transferred. So some of these things aren't designed to accommodate, inflation and the new costs that are associated with things that happen. This would actually correct that as well. It would tie it to the number of people involved in their office. So they would go to a personnel rate as well. I think that would help them keep up with what the costs are. The last thing I would mention is that, and we can report on this, the last item, the rate, which is $2,793, that's important to us as a IT department and as a management team. That's a KPI or a key performance indicator. It's a measurement. So how much does it cost per unit to run IT for these people? Well, we know now that it's $2,793. As that cost goes up, we know that we're paying more for the services. If it stays the same, we're doing really good. I don't know that it'll ever go down, but you're trying to control for that to say, per unit pricing is staying flat or at least less than inflation. So if that number were to go up by 2% a year, it wouldn't surprise me, because that's what we're doing with wages. And then if you add benefits to that, you're probably a blended rate of maybe 3 or 4% increase. And that's just reality of what's happening economically speaking. You could see something substantially different if you had a large change in personnel in the county due to cuts. You said, we're not going to support as much as we used to. So you reduce, say something like a 5% across the board cut like they had years ago. If you had something like that, I would expect some of the costs to go down. So you would be measuring your performance based on that FTE unit price. It gives you something to look at too. You'll know where we're at every year.
Leonard.
Thank you. I'm in support of option 3, and I think the fact that Rogers really spelled everything out very well for us, and the fact that there is flexibility in making some adjustments for certain areas that may not be able to afford the full cost initially, I'm in full support of option 3.
I think one of the things that we're facing as commissioners on both sides is I don't believe the Forest Preserve has ever considered this a cost of doing business. And do we want to think of it in terms of a Forest Preserve budget as a cost of doing business? Because everybody else has to do the same thing. Another thing is that when somebody rubs their hands together and says, oh, I've got a grant, I'm going to bring in 6 interns and we're going to research this program, it would be possible to say, gee, IT, is there a cost affiliated with the desks and the telephones and the computers that come with those cheap interns? It's a way of
that happens quite frequently, where we'll show them a statement of work for the equipment and the costs, but the support costs could be prorated, by month, 1/12 of a year, 6/12, whatever you want to. We could do that as well with this same rate per year.
Well, beware of all that's offered for free. Okay, is there more discussion?
I'd just add, Davis here.
Go ahead, Mr. Davis.
And Mr. Leonard advocated very nicely for the Forest Preserve in terms of trying to achieve flexibility and prorating amounts. And I certainly have spoken with Roger on this topic for quite a while now. This exercise was absolutely necessary for him. The good news is that the members of the county board work very closely with the commissioners of the Forest Preserve District. And I'm hopeful that we can, continue to look at this. We have a little bit of time and, recognize that it is a cost of doing business. But that there are revenue and taxing limitations that exist in a greater degree for the Forest Preserve than for the county. We may even have some discussion of, discounted rate or something. It's going to merit quite a bit more discussion, but we do take it seriously and recognize it as a cost of doing business. So I'm sure we'll get a resolution here.
And Mr. Kais, did I see your hand?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I know that you've explained this a number of times and been very free and informing us. I'm afraid I'm just a little, maybe I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed because each time I go through it, it's a complex issue. So in our table here, that's the red, blue, green, is there anything that shows any of those departments or like the Forest Preserve, what they pay now compared to what?
There is,
That compares what the chargeback would be, right? It's not.
yeah,
like
there's a
we-
lot of departments that are under the general fund that they don't pay us.
They don't
anything.
show up at all.
Yeah, they don't
in
pay
this
anything.
in this table. So
Yeah, only special revenue would show an actual cost coming back to them. Actually, Blair, let me sit there for a second. Is that the one that's showing up there, Mark?
broken down, right?
I'll try to walk through this real quick. So let me make sure I got a mic. Is this on? Okay. All right. So if you're looking at this chart and table and go. If I can figure out what I got going on here. That might be easier to read. Is that a little better?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're looking at the right-hand column where it says chargeback amount, showback amount, or current chargeback on 2020, those are the numbers we're talking about. So based on this year's budget, what would the future chargeback be is what that third column. And then there's this number which is described as a showback. And showback would simply be a column we'd fill out for the offices and departments under general fund. So what you're seeing is the left column is the chargeback amount based on the formula. And the showback amount would be these general fund ones. And then these are all special revenue funds. All of these would see. And there's out here is what you're seeing is not anything. They're not paying anything, but yet they have employees that we've gone through the budget books and said these are the employees that they have. So you'll see all these are small numbers, but they're not, they're not basically paying anything, even though they're collecting money from state, federal sources, outside, outside funds. And that's what we're talking about. The general fund ones, you won't see because we obviously they're rolled into the general fund tax levy. But then as you get down, let's try and find the Forest Preserve. They're
Bottom.
At the very bottom, I
Down
think.
right there
Yeah.
too.
So right now in the Forest Preserves numbers, we have this showing the 272, and that was based on the formula that we were using, and they never pay it. I'm just going to tell you, they just have never paid that, even if we show it to them.
And that's that they're not paying is the center column there that they're.
No, the center
right.
column is unrelated. It's a showback. We don't have any showbacks because these are in this view because they're all special revenues.
Right.
Yeah, a showback would just be a department that's in the general fund. So we would show them what their costs are, but we don't send them a bill because they're basically out of the same fund as the general fund. But that's kind of the difference. So you see a lot of these small things that are in here that, have people associated with them that they're paying for the people, but they don't pay for any support whatsoever for those people to be on the systems that they're using. That's what we're trying to recover.
And at the very bottom, the Geneva,
What's
is
that? Yeah,
Geneva is a
the city.
flat fee. Is that why?
They're paying for basically like hosted servers and services. They're buying infrastructure. They're not actually, we don't support their offices. We provide them with some equipment that they use on network. So it's all inclusive in that price, what we do. We showed them a rate per year. They're a little bit different because we're
So
not
They
providing.
wouldn't fit into the formula at all.
Yeah, we don't charge them per employee. It's just a statement of work and an extended cost.
Yeah.
So it's like a sales quote.
And
but
that's
what
equitable though?
Yes, yeah. And we've been doing that one for some time. The one thing I would note is there's a couple examples in here. I was going to try and find one where it's a little looks a little bit strange. Let me see if I can find it. It's hard to see it up there. Yeah, Charles, I'm looking for the one for transportation funds. There it is.
Yep.
Yeah, so if you're looking at this one at the bottom right, you'll see this where it shows 217 and it splits it between two. There's a couple of those where in the funds, in the line items, they're actually coming from 2 separate or 3 separate line items, and we charge them a particular dollar amount, but it's kind of it's built out of all the different funds. So we just show one number to the right, but this is actually the cumulative of these line items, as opposed to extending each one. We just showed KDOT one bill. They can pay it however they want, and KDOT does pay. They actually would see a slightly lower rate. Mr. Martin.
Am I correct that we also provide services for some of the smaller communities?
We do. We provide for Geneva Township. We provide them with phones. They pay part of the phone bill for their phones, so we have a chargeback set up just for phones for them. The city of Geneva, we provide servers for, I think, their finance system and a couple of other systems, but we don't support their users, their people.
Is there any benefit or mutual benefit because we obviously have a great superstructure in place to handle this stuff?
Yep.
Is there any inducement or benefit to the county if we are more aggressive in offering services to the smaller communities and they could save money over needing to hire full-time personnel? Yeah, obviously we'd have to add personnel, and maybe it doesn't make any practical sense, but
I think the example of Geneva was a really good case. They were looking at buying server and storage infrastructure to run their finance system, and the cost of them buying it and putting the infrastructure in was significant capital expense versus paying us to use our infrastructure. So it was a really good business case for them. They didn't have to make a huge capital investment. They basically bought what amounted to cloud solution from the county. So they paid, let's say over the period of 5 years, they're paying their what's equivalent to a lease payment kind of the space they're using. The staff that supports it, Geneva's, I think 2 or 3 people run their IT functions. It's a small group. We work closely with them. We've talked to them before about other services. Do they want phones, or do they want to try and do something more? They've been interested, but kind of like at a standstill. I think one of the things that the other agencies struggle with is that while we do things at a level that provides high continuity and high availability and really, I think, a pretty quality service, a lot of them are at a point where they would provide a lesser service or less availability and less quality at a lower price, and are willing to do that. They're willing to accept it that way. So then when you show them what we would charge to do it, they're like, well, it's certainly cheaper to do nothing until you need to do something, and we've run across that a couple small villages where they'll ask us, hey, well, what would it cost for you to support our police, our fire, or our offices? And we show them what we charge, and they're like, well, we don't spend anything on it right now, or we spend very little. And the response is, well, you're not comparing what we do to what you're doing now. We're talking about a office that has, backups. We have antivirus. We actually do all the, patch management. We have security folks that are, maintaining everything to current standards. So you may have a system in a small village where they installed it, 5-6 years ago, and they've never touched it again. And because they're kind of obscure, they've never had a security event. They don't feel any need to replace it, upgrade it, patch it, which would cost.
In the context of things like their liability insurance,
Yeah.
and everything else, it would just seem like an underwriter is going to look at the circumstance.
Eventually, they might run across that.
The reason, I mean,
Yeah.
I think the reason I ask it is obvious. If it was a profit center for the county, that would
Sure.
be great for our budget. But the other thing is, like living in Geneva, we have a 3-city 911. We have
Yes.
Tri-Com. And I know all towns are doing things like,
So,
they haven't yet technically combined fire departments, but if you have a fire in a certain area, there's going to be a Batavia, in Geneva, there's going to be a Batavia truck show up or a St. Charles truck show up. It just seems like it's an area that is ripe to be
Well,
shared.
I would
Benefit of taxing bodies.
I would say a good example, recent addition was Tri-Com 911. We've been working with them. I think, Charles, we put in all their phones. So we did their phone system for them. And I think we did some networking and switched electronics for them. And that was actually at their municipal body's request. They asked us if we could help them get that done and charge them back because they wanted, it was interesting. I mean, they wanted to change the connection between the 911 center and the municipality. They wanted to kind of get it out of the city's network. And we were working with them. And because we are their backup center for 911, we already have a network there, and we offered to drop phones at a price. So we do that. We haven't marketed it. I think that would be the unique difference, would be to go approaching other entities. And I would say that the challenge you run into is that with our offices and departments, this is pretty much below cost because of the way we're trying to capture personnel and wages back. So if you go at this from a marketing perspective, I think we'd want to calculate it at cost and maybe a cost plus in order to make it worth it.
I was going to say, from a county perspective, it would seem like cost plus, but having been involved with my own small business for years, IT and support and all this stuff is a constant headache because the people that are making the decisions to either hire the employees or the services really don't know what they're talking about. And if we had a competent, and I'm thinking of the village of Lily Lake or the city of Geneva or whatever else, if we had a competent governmental entity that understood the language, it would just seem to me to be worth the money. And it's out of my budget. I don't have, it's employee, it's 1 or 2 employees in a small circumstance. You mentioned Geneva, if they have 3 people.
Yeah.
Well, if it was the county that ran this, that's 3 people that I don't have to employ, I don't have to pay benefits for, I don't have to deal with. It just somehow it just rings with me as a potential to benefit the whole world in King County.
We've done a lot with GIS too, where we cooperated and done GIS. Tom and Akoski and GIS have done GIS mapping services for Elburn and some, I think North Aurora we did some for. And so, we're in communication with them from time to time when they need things. Most of the agencies, we will tell them to contact us if there's something they think that we could help with. We would basically, if they don't have a support agreement with us, we would show them a statement of work. So even an office like Workforce Investment. Now, Workforce Investment is pretty separate from what we do day to day as the county. When they were discussing their recent move, we gave them an entire statement of work, showed them fully loaded costs of what it would cost to do what they wanted, asked them to sign off on it, and then we execute. So we do statements of work for some of the smaller agencies in the county if they're interested in us doing it. Again, I think figuring out the cost structure, we could work on that. I think that's doable. And then, I think marketing it's always been a challenge. for an IT group like ours. We just don't, go out and solicit business. So if that's something that the board or committee would like us to look at, we certainly could. I know that right now with everything we have, we're pretty full, stacked up. So I wouldn't imagine doing anything at or below cost. We'd have to probably be adding people to support additional work. So it'd have to add to the value of our current model. It couldn't be a break-even proposition.
I wouldn't want to do it break
Yeah.
even. And I'm looking at it from the county's revenue perspective.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that may in fact not only benefit the county, but be a benefit to the rest of it.
I think we've approached it with a lot. Well, we have 16 police and fire subscribers with CaneCom, and we support most of their mobile equipment through the subscriber agreements now. So a lot of the small police and fire, we already have some presence with them. All of the subscribers of CaneCom have our help desk and emergency contact information. If they need anything, we'll respond, and then we tell them, if you don't want to take out a support agreement with us at this kind of rates, we would do it just based on time and material. So if you tell us you need something, we'll come do it, and then we'll send you a statement. But that's not the general maintenance of their office. It's kind of a one-time event, and we've had some of those where people have asked us to help. But I think that's an avenue to pursue. We could look at what a fee structure for that type of service would be, and we could shoot it out to a couple agencies to see what they think.
Well,
They're interested.
That's my thought. I don't know
Okay.
what the rest of the committee thinks, but it just
It
seems like we've got a capacity that we can offer that might not be otherwise available to the smaller governmental bodies, and could make us a few shekels
Sure.
here to help our own budget.
I was here when decisions, I was really new, when decisions were being made about what we would charge to record documents, with the understanding that that money was going to be turned over to GIS so that GIS could share its information with all of the villages, municipalities, fire districts, and so on. And that was a decision, McCoy was chairman at the time, and that was a decision that we would collect that money and then spend that money to share our information, because we could get it, we could gather it so well and so concisely, and then make it available to everyone. So if Elgin wanted to know where its fire hydrants were, where its stoplights were, where its cabling was, they could just ask us for it, and we would share all of that with them, because we had it and they could use it. So, is this kind of a comparable situation where we have capacity, and what is a good way to make that available to other folks who could use it?
Well, to our mutual benefit. I mean, that's like if I had a 8-passenger SUV
Yeah.
and I wanted to
Sure.
become an Uber driver,
Sure.
I already own the SUV, so why not?
Well, the only difference I'm going to say is that with the GIS stuff was that we had a method of supporting it. We were able to take in a bunch of money.
Well, we'd have to figure the economics.
To-
Yeah.
It would have to work economically. I wouldn't
So-
suggest anything that wouldn't be a cost plus environment for the
Yeah.
county. Because otherwise we're just maintaining infrastructure and personnel for no benefits. So why?
It- And we could certainly pursue that and get some type of a schedule similar to this that would show people, if you are interested in us doing this, this is the rate. And it might be similar to the green column, that's 100%, or the blue column, which is, just the cost in our commodities and contractual, or it could be the personnel plus 10%, just to make sure we're not in error saying that, we can cover their work. I think, the bigger challenge and Charles would probably back me up on this, I hope, but the bigger challenge is uplifting their current environment to our standards so that we can support it. So we get into some of the things with some of the small agencies, and they have stuff that has been there, longer than I've probably been in the industry. And you're like, okay, well, in order to really support this, you're going to have to replace, 10, 15 desktops, and you're going to have to license it. We can't operate without licensing. So you'll find places where, unfortunately, not all of that is clearly laid out. They bought a copy of Office back in 2003, and they've used it, and now we're on Office 2016 or a new version, and we would say, well, in order to effectively support you, we need a Windows 10 desktop, we need you to have all these patches and antivirus, and so it's a good program, it's quality, and it works, and we can support it. But to uplift them to that level, they usually look at it and they're like, the cost associated. I can tell you from working with one of the police agencies that a small police agency, when we talked to them about supporting their agency, because they thought it was very compelling that they would be compliant, and have all their software working, we got down to where we were like, well, based on the part-time officers and the scheduling, we think you guys are somewhere in about a $15,000 a year to run a police agency and their computer environment. And their exact response was, that's too much money. I'd hire a part-time officer and just do it on paper. Like, okay, so that's kind of the extreme, but that's one of their,
Be everybody.
yeah,
We're going to run into that.
yes,
But even more sizable places might find it
sure.
making some sense to,
Sure.
I don't know,
And-
it's just a thought, but we're always looking for ways to assist our budget, and being a resident of a city, as we all are, or someplace, most of us are, if you can
Yeah.
figure out ways that would benefit other taxing bodies.
We certainly will look into it. Absolutely. I think it's something that we could offer. And as long as as long as they understand the value and they understand that, it does cost money, then, and they're interested in the quality and the value proposition, it makes sense. If they're looking at it from the perspective of, I don't spend very much or very little on it now, and that's going to cost more, it gets to the point where they just, don't want to look at it. So, but we'll get some type of a schedule similar to this and show you what it would
Does
look
it make
like.
sense to you? I don't want to.
Yeah. It does. I mean, we do it now. It's just we do it in small pieces, very small pieces, because it's kind of an on demand. When somebody asks us, can we do it? We would look at the costs and show them a proposal for doing it. So anybody that came along to do it now, we would entertain it. We would show them what it would take. And then they'd have to consider if they want to move forward with us getting an intergovernmental agreement. Just be a standard intergovernmental agreement, and this is the rates that you're going to pay. And it would come back through the committee, and we'd work it through.
Almost everything we do, fashion is kind of this thing. I mean, we provide a jail that everybody gets to use.
Yep.
We provide, you know what I mean? All the municipalities are already utilizing county facilities, so it's not an alien concept. To me, it's just a question of dollars, and do they have to make a decision that they want to upgrade if that's.
I think the third or fourth leg on the chair is control, and the IT stuff that they run or operate between their own IT staff and their management team having control of their own destiny. And we've gotten that from some agencies where it's like, well, if the county is needs to do something in an emergency, would they address my issues, or would they go fix the county's issues first? Or, what's the priority? We've gotten a couple people that were concerned, with public safety and what we had told them is, well, the sheriff's systems, public safety and health get top priority. That's what we fix first, no matter what. Those have to be online, have to be working. So I'm like, you're in good company. Your stuff will be, first on the list. But as you move down to lesser critical systems, anybody that's subscribing from a municipality has to understand, if we have, major issues with something, which we don't have usually, we have those priorities set up for health and public safety. That will always be that way. So if they're dealing with some type of a file system problem for their, back office, it would not take precedence over public safety. It just wouldn't. So, and as long as they understand that, for some of our agreements, we have service level agreements that explain the terms of that. We could easily adapt one of those to show them, this is how we handle your services in the order of events. It's actually pretty well spelled out how we prioritize and do things through our help desk. So it's not like, I think in 18 years, I don't think we've ever had an issue where that's been an issue.
Well, the other,
Yeah.
I don't want to dominate, take the whole morning on this topic. Having gone through this,
Yeah.
the idea that you know somebody is reliable before you bring them in.
Sure.
You're not interviewing them and saying, do you want to be my IT person? Or you're not trying to
Yep.
get a bunch of recommendations from people on who do you use for your IT. To me,
Sure.
it would be,
I would tell you that the value just of having our folks that do licensing management, that alone, most of the villages could probably use that, because licensing this stuff is, you just saw our licensing for Microsoft go through. That's because we do it all legally licensed software. I think if you looked at other, entities and looked for their licensing costs, you'd find it buried sometime years ago where they bought something and they've just been writing it into the sunset, but that's a big issue with a lot of the small agencies, is just figuring out their licensing,
well, enough,
yeah.
enough on my, so.
I did roll back in this sheet to the showbacks. Chris, the middle column in this is the department showbacks. So you'll see what we show back to, this is the county board offices show back, and then you'll even see IT is in there. So it's accounting for what we would show back to general fund offices. And it's just a way of measuring how much they cost us. It's not a bill.
Fascinating stuff.
Okay.
Okay. Other discussion on the resolution? Shall we move forward? Ready to call the roll? Thank you, Karen.
Davist,
Susie?
Braz,
Yes.
Caius,
Yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Alan, aye. Good. Okay, thank you, folks. Our last resolution is for Mill Creek for approving their contract for office space. Didn't we just do this? Feels like we do office space all the time. Okay, may I
Does
have
sound
a,
familiar.
I'm sorry?
Oh, sorry, I agree. It sounds familiar, like we.
Mark, did you want to weigh in on the resolution for the IT chargebacks?
I was trying to, if for some reason my tablet's not cooperating. But
Okay.
yeah, I support the resolution. I would say yes to it.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Good. Got that, Karen? Karen's good. Okay. May I have a motion on this resolution for the Mill Creek office space? Mr. Frost moves, Mr. Leonard, Mr. Martin seconds. Is there any discussion on this? We've seen it before. Could you call the roll?
Davist,
Davis, yes.
Braz,
Yes.
Caius,
Yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Alan, aye. Perfect. Good. Okay, there are no vehicles today.
Nope.
We saw a great video on our multi-use facility. We're going to hold off on Fabian for a few months. New business, old business, good of the cause? Okay, may I have a motion to put the reports on file? I see Mr. Leonard's hand. I see Mr. Caius's hand for a second. Any discussion on the reports? Could we call the roll when you're ready?
Davist,
Davis, yes.
Braz,
Yes.
Caius,
Yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Okay, no need for executive session, and so a motion to adjourn. Mr. Davis, are you moving adjournment?
Sure. Davis
Okay,
moves.
Mr. Frost seconds, and this is an up or down vote. All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? We are adjourned. Folks, thank you.